Bradley Emmanuel Beal, real deal Beal. When you think of the Washington Wizards and you think of them in the past decade, who do you think of? Okay, I know the answer is actually John Wall, but Bradley Beal deserves to be on that list too. So we just got a report that Beal and Wizards management were going to sit down and discuss finding a new home for Bradley. This has been speculated for many years now, but the timing of this all makes perfect sense right now. Requesting a trade is not as common as it used to be. Back in the day, basically every summer, there were these superstars we could bank on requesting a trade, a big trade, because they hadn't sniffed their little version of success yet, whether it be they wanted a bigger market, or in many cases they just wanted to be in a place where they could contend for a championship. Different players have different priorities. But now the strategy has shifted due to the previous CBA negotiations that introduced supermax contracts. The strategy is now as follows. You're drafted by your team, become a young star, you build the trust and loyalty of that fan base, and you don't want to be considered an evil demon who requests trades like Dwight Howard. And then you don't even make it to free agency because you're so loyal, you immediately sign a supermax extension for millions and millions of dollars. Now your team probably isn't that good because you're making so much money, and people have that sympathy for you now for being #loyal. I'm so loyal to this loyal. I'm loyal to this team. So then you go to your management, who doesn't really want to pay you that $50 million for the next 5 years, and you quote unquote work together to find a trade instead of that team being a treadmill team and you're paying millions of dollars to one guy for the next few years, not going anywhere. Bradley Beal played this perfectly. People were begging for him to request a trade every year, but he stayed put. Why would Beal want to stay in Washington? People always used to say that. He probably didn't. He probably just wanted to be one of the highest paid players ever while being given a no trade clause and having everyone love him. And this is very important for the sake of the video's discussion, by the way. Ultimately, you end up finding a way to get to whatever team you want that you consider your best option while being paid a boatload of money. So here we are now. On one hand, Beal makes so much money that it will be tough to create a fair trade, and every team won't have the distinguished opportunity to trade for a contract like that. But on the other hand, that no trade clause makes it so a fair deal won't be necessary. I'm not sure what Washington's front office was thinking, but let's look into some of their options, some that are likely, some that are not as likely.
I'll start with one that you could say is a little unlikely. We could call that unlikely. Okay, the Boston Celtics. I do think that any trade that the Celtics are going to pull off here will probably have to involve Jaylen Brown. The problem is I think Jaylen Brown honestly has more trade value than Bradley Beal at this point. Alright, so now we have a report that the Kings are interested in Beal, but it doesn't seem likely. How would that trade even work? Let me look at the Kings' salaries real quick. Probably like Herter, and then you could throw in one of Holmes or Malik Monk. And then you throw in a pick, maybe some seconds. I don't know. I'm not too sure. I think they would probably throw in a first. Then we have my favorite option out of all the teams I'm going to talk about here. Miami. Miami just lost in the finals. They're looking for that big upgrade that puts them over the top. Hero and Lowry or Duncan Robinson for salary and probably one pick or some seconds. That would get it done. Now we have the Knicks. Pretty simple in that the Knicks are kind of always looking for another star. Beal could be that guy. Cash in on RJ Barrett right now, throw in some draft picks, a first and some seconds, something similar value to that, and you can call it a day. You need more time to figure out something like this. So there are other teams like Milwaukee and Portland that you're hearing are in the mix, but really it all boils down to this. Beal has a no trade clause, so there's almost no chance he gets traded for a haul. His contract is also so massive, he's not worth that much anyways. Can a team do enough to fit his salary without having to give up too much depth logistically?
But some teams are going to have to take a look and see, is Beal's talents worth potentially gutting my team's depth and paying a huge luxury tax bill for? The bill for Beal, if you will. I'm being funny. Anyways, overall, I think Beal has been underrated these past few years. It's easy to look at a guy that's been on a team that hasn't done anything and try and diminish his talent. I think his salary is awful, and you would definitely suffer for that in the long run. But in the short term, if he can find his way to where there's a team out there and they barely give out too many rotation players to bring him in, he's going to really elevate one of those teams next year in the right situation. I think we're going to wake up someday in the next week or so and be surprised how little he was actually traded for.
I think we're going to wake up someday in the next week or so.
All right, so I finished a video about Beal's potential trade destinations. And of course, while I'm about to upload it, the dude actually gets traded to Phoenix for basically Chris Paul, the corpse of Chris Paul. He basically got traded for Chris Paul's contract and a bunch of trash, which is, what happens when a player has a no trade clause. So I think I'm just going to repurpose the video I already finished and just kind of throw this audio in there. Maybe I'll keep some of the older stuff in there as a joke. So let me just get into what is going on with Phoenix right now. I'm literally recording on my phone, by the way. I have no other option right now. But I see a lot of people saying, oh, that's all Beal was traded for. Of course, it's all he was traded for. He had a no trade clause. That's what happens. Phoenix didn't have any first to give away anyway, so there was never going to be any first round picks involved. The trade was never going to work out for Washington. To me, this makes Washington look very bad, even though the trade was obviously never going to be something good, like a haul that most other all-stars go for. Though, who do we blame for Bradley Beal getting a no trade clause? First, we got to blame the Washington front office. I feel like they didn't have to give him a no trade clause. Of course, Beal could have, taken his talents elsewhere, but at that point, you just got to cut your losses because that means he doesn't want to be there anyway. Earlier in this video, I described the process of stars taking big contracts and kind of forcing their way out now, and Beal basically had that built in with his no trade clause. I do want to mention that, since people love to rag on Clutch Sports and how they're manipulating the league and all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. Funny that Bradley Beal's agent has connections to the Suns front office now, as their CEO is his son. So very interesting how this all played out, how Phoenix came out of nowhere and all of a sudden Bradley Beal is now a Sun, probably a couple days after this was all reported in the first place. Moving on from that, I think the worst part about how the Wizards handled all of this is that you could have done this a year ago, got a better return, and you could have been in a good position to tank for Victor. Now, you don't have that luxury, but you basically have to commit to a rebuild. I don't know. Washington is kind of silly. Maybe they won't even do that, but I really hope they do. You got to get Porzingis out of there. Kuzma just opted out of his contract, so you don't have a choice with him. Any other player that has some value there, you basically got to get them gone. Now, as for Phoenix, honestly, good job for them. I mean, I don't like the fit. Their payroll is going to be insane, but, they got a new owner. New owners like to do this. They like to do a big splash, make a big trade, and they made the KD trade. Now they're making the Beal trade. For most teams, you would have thought there's no way to bring in an all-star when your payroll is so ridiculous, but they were able to kind of use this opportunity to their advantage. Not often does an all-star come available and you don't have to trade it first to get them, so props to them for making that work. I guess Beal is now the point guard for that team. Yeah, that's not going to be pretty. They're going to have to figure something out real quick. Going to have to see if they can trade DeAndre Ayton, flip him to a couple of bench pieces or a starter. Maybe a starting role player, starting caliber role player, that type of deal. And maybe you pick up a center in free agency, a ring chasing center. You need some ring chasing vets. Going to be very hard to find some 3D. Going to be very hard to find some 3-and-D guys that just want to come and play in Phoenix and not get paid for their talent. So it's going to be real rough. Frank Vogel has a lot on his plate right now to get away, to get Devin Booker, to get Bradley Beal, and to get a really old Kevin Durant to lock in defensively. And I guess DeAndre Ayton at this point, but I don't think he'll stay around. I mean, it'll be really tough to field this team as it is. But, they're trying to go for offensive firepower, for star power. I understand that strategy. They see an opportunity in front of them. They got Beal for very little. I don't really blame them for that. The fit isn't perfect, but hey, they made it work. They got the trade done. Use the situation to their advantage. That's what smart front offices do. To me, this does not make Phoenix the favorites. We're going to see how the rest of their team shakes out. They have a lot of top heavy loaded talent right now, but we got to see how they can trim the fat and figure out other players to put around their main guys right now. Unfortunate for Miami, it would have been a very clear upgrade for them, but it's a very clear path to making it all happen too. I even heard that Tyler Hero wasn't even going to be involved at some point, which makes sense considering what Beal was actually traded for. He was traded for basically nothing in some seconds, but now Miami will probably shift their focus to somebody like Dame, which is what I just saw. Long story short, Phoenix is really going to have to rely on some veteran ring chasers coming in and taking some pay cuts and finding some defined roles for some players, because it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough at first. So we'll see how this all plays out. They got to be healthy. That's the most important thing as well. Got to stay healthy. We'll see. Overall, thank y'all. I'm going up in subscribers. I think I have 64 now. Nintendo shout out to 64. Always one of my favorite numbers because of Nintendo 64. Anyways, like I said, I get to 1,000, giving away a free jersey. I know it seems like it's a long way away, but maybe I'll have my breakthrough at some moment. So we'll see. Appreciate the love, y'all. I'm going to keep going.